Back in the days, most of the time, you would wait for someone to make the first move. It might be on the first date, it might be the third date, whatever. It could be the man, it could be the woman. But now, all my friends have noticed that the man has stopped making the first move. All my girlfriends are like, they're waiting. It's the third date, fourth date, a week later. He hasn't gone in for the kiss. He doesn't do any touching or anything. And I've asked my dude friends that are single, and they are like, you don't know where a woman's gonna go with that story anymore. I ain't touching nobody. And it sucks because the Me Too movement is so strong and so powerful for the people that need it, but it shouldn't ruin the maturity that we should have within intimacy and relationships.
Do you know that men trying to approach women in today's world is a minefield? Yes. 55% of single men aged 18 to 39 say they haven't approached a woman in the last year. And 77% of women aged 18 to 30 wished they were approached more often. At ages 41 and above, the trend changes, and 55% of women say they do not want to be approached anymore. But 50% of the men report not wanting to approach women for fear of being seen as creepy or predatory. 17% of Americans aged 18 to 29 believe that a man inviting a woman out for a date always or usually means and eventually leads to some sort of harassment. 82% of women report experiencing creepy behavior most of the time they're out on dates. This is a difficult circle to square. Women face a tough dilemma in today's unprecedented times. They are scared for their safety, but also have a preference for men making the first move. Men face the terrifying dilemma of being seen as creepy, but also know that if they don't approach a woman, the conversation will not even start. But why do our society and media continuously portray that men should not approach women in the first place? My guess is that it's mostly leftover women aged 40 plus who are in charge of publishing in the female-led media, where they promote a narrative discouraging men from approaching women because that's not what they want. But they really don't realize that younger women want men to approach them. In a recent Forbes article that quoted the Pew Research statistics we just shared with you, data reveals that 57% of single adults in the US are not looking to date, and the main reason for that is that they're terrified of approaching women. Roughly 6 in 10 young men report being single. In this case, young meant age-wise, younger than 30 years of age, rather than a propensity to wear skinny jeans. The majority of single adults are not interested in being hit by Cupid's arrow. Now, being struck by an arrow didn't mean a go-to-the-emergency room type of situation. The percentage of single Americans who are looking for a relationship or casual dates is lower than in 2019, especially among men. This number dropped from 49% in 2019 to 42% in 2022, 61% to 50% among single men, and 38% to 35% among single women. The type of relationship single Americans are looking for varies by gender. While 19% of men were looking for casual dates only, fewer single women, which is 15%, said the same. A greater percentage of single women, between 41% versus 25%, were looking for a committed romantic relationship only. Nearly half of single and looking adults have turned to online dating in the past year. Nearly half meant 45%. This broke down to 53% of singles 18 to 49 years of age and 25% of singles 50 years and older. Keep in mind that these were survey results from a specific sample at a given time and don't necessarily apply to each and every person all the time. So, if you were out on a first date on Valentine's Day, don't point to the person accusingly and say, "You are 7% likely to just want casual intimacy." Even though the sample was designed to be nationally representative of the US adult population from a rough demographic measure standpoint, you can't tell for sure how well it actually represents the entire US adult population. People are a lot more complex and diverse than what their age, gender, race, ethnicity, and geographic location may say. But these statistics tell a sadder truth about this generation of men. According to an NYU psychology professor, we're in a crisis of connection. Disconnection from ourselves and disconnection from each other. And it's getting worse. The male numbers come sharply juxtaposed to the 34% of women under 30 who now say they're single, which has seen only a slight pandemic rise in that age group. Another factor at play might be the interests of women changing, especially as suitors of the same age are becoming apparently less desirable, experts said. Women would rather go to brunch with friends than have a horrible date. Today, approaching women nearly always results in humiliation, being called a perv, or just being ignored and socially shunned. Why? Because most males are perceived by women as predators or desperate men. They will be fine if they already know a guy and want him to contact them, but that is another matter. Yet it is simply not worthwhile for a male to approach an unidentified woman. Too many risks exist. Social embarrassment, total ignorance, and a generalized dread of rejection all seem too risky. The average woman would embarrass the average guy more frequently than not if he politely approached her to start a discussion. I saw a video where a man tries to speak to a lady without being impolite or weird, and she just makes a complete fool of him. For giggles and attention, and maybe taking a shot at being viral, the woman published the contact to social media after fabricating the story that he was a weirdo. As I saw this unfold, I found myself wondering why in the world I would want to approach a lady today. We also need to realize that various guys are treated differently by different women in order to comprehend why this is taking place. So let me clarify what this implies, since I know you might be confused about it. I want you guys to consider the status and how one's perceived worth affects how they are treated. Consider instances in your own life where you were approached by a beggar or a homeless person who appeared disheveled. You immediately went on the defensive and decided not to communicate with them or offer them anything. The same is true for women, although today's situation is far worse than it was a century ago. Women must always exercise additional caution, since they may at any time be seized against their will by a male. The issue arises, though, when you witness a woman publicly humiliating a man for just speaking to her while she is out in a public place with a large group of onlookers and knows she is somewhat secure. So, if we dig a little further, we can only deduce that contemporary women no longer appreciate the typical male or men in general. Returning to my subject of status, do you believe a woman would treat someone like Elon Musk or some rich billionaire the same way if she is known for showing disdain for the average and below average men that approach her? Men are now starting to wake up and understand all of this. They don't have time to waste worrying about women who make interacting with them pointless. Women don't appear to be aware of how essentially rigged the game is against guys. They desire what they desire. Men will also no longer engage in accepting the unsupportive behaviors of women. They're done being used for nothing. This is happening in 2023, and I predict this will keep on happening for the next 10 years. After that, there will come a time when it will be normal for guys to not approach women, and women will have to really work to get a man's attention to get a bit of the free validation they used to get before. For women, it's always about validation, and that's never going to change, no matter how independent, woke, or liberated they become. They will always need guys and other women to validate them for everything they do. Here's the problem. Women expect men to approach them the same way they've been approaching them in the past. But in the past, circumstances were different. Men and women were more comfortable in their own skin and in their own gender. Men know they were responsible for providing for women, and women knew they were responsible for taking care of the men and for giving birth to children and raising families. So the norm at that time allowed men to approach women and allowed women to expect that men would approach them. If more women understood this, they might not be complaining about men not approaching them. The fact is that the Me Too movement failed big time and has completely brainwashed men into thinking that every time they approach a woman, there's a 90% chance they'll get accused of harassment. Thanks for watching Man Reacts. Show us your love and support by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the channel. And let us know your thoughts on this in the comments. We're always up for a healthy debate and discussion.